The scent of pine and cinnamon hit me the moment I pushed through the heavy glass doors of Bellissimo, the kind of restaurant where I'd never be able to afford even an appetizer on my waitress salary. My fingers trembled as I adjusted the black apron tied around my waist, still damp from where I'd scrubbed a coffee stain in the staff bathroom. The fabric clung uncomfortably to my uniform, but I couldn't afford to look anything less than pristine tonight. Christmas Eve service at Bellissimo meant tips that could cover my rent, maybe even leave enough for the medication I'd been stretching for 3 weeks. "Table 12 needs water," Marco hissed as he breezed past me, his arms loaded with plates that probably cost more than my entire week's wages. "And smile, Arya. You look like you're attending a funeral." I forced my lips upward, though the expression felt like a mask. Everything felt like a mask lately. 6 months of double shifts, of swallowing my pride, of pretending the world wasn't crushing me slowly beneath its weight. My reflection in the polished silver of a passing tray caught my eye. Dark circles I'd tried to conceal with drugstore makeup, hair pulled back so tightly it made my scalp ache, eyes that had forgotten how to shine. The dining room thrummed with wealth. Crystal chandeliers scattered light like diamonds across white tablecloths. Women draped in furs and jewels laughed behind manicured hands. Men in suits that cost more than my car checked gold watches between sips of wine I couldn't pronounce. I moved between them like a ghost, visible only when they needed something, invisible the moment I delivered it. "Miss." The voice cut through the ambient noise, low and commanding in a way that made my spine straighten involuntarily. I turned toward table 7, the corner booth that had been roped off all evening. My manager had been nervous about it, checking his phone every 5 minutes, adjusting the reserve sign 3 times. Now I understood why. 3 men occupied the space, but only one mattered. He sat with his back to the wall. Of course he did. Positioned where he could see every entrance, every exit, every person who moved through his line of sight. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers, not in the shadowy corners of exclusive restaurants. Sharp jawline, olive skin, eyes so dark they appeared black in the dim lighting. He couldn't have been more than 30, but he wore authority like other men wore cologne. A suited guard stood near the booth's edge, and I caught sight of another by the kitchen entrance. The man at the table held a phone in one hand, and I noticed a second device on the table beside his untouched wine. Everything about him screamed danger wrapped in expensive Italian wool. "Yes, sir?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "What can I get for you?" Those dark eyes lifted to mine, and the world seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. He didn't look at me the way other patrons did. Through me, past me, at me with impatience or dismissal. He looked at me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve, piece by careful piece. "The Barolo," he said, his accent placing him somewhere between Brooklyn and the old country. "The 2015. I nodded, grateful for the excuse to escape that penetrating gaze. But as I turned, his voice stopped me again. "You're new here." It wasn't a question. I faced him again, clutching my order pad like a shield. "3 months, sir." "You don't belong here." Again, not a question. A statement delivered with absolute certainty. Heat crept up my neck. "I'm sorry if my service... That's not what I meant." He leaned back, and the leather creaked softly beneath him. One of his companions whispered something, but he waved the man silent without breaking eye contact with me. "You move like someone who's afraid of taking up space, like you're apologizing for existing." The observation landed like a physical blow. I opened my mouth, closed it, felt my carefully constructed composure cracking at the edges. "The wine, sir. I'll get your wine." I fled before he could say anything else, before he could strip away any more of the protective layers I'd built between myself and the world. My hands shook as I retrieved the bottle from the temperature-controlled case, and I had to read the label twice to make sure I had the right year. When I returned to table 7, he was alone. The 2 men had vanished, though I spotted them near the bar, speaking in low tones to Marco. The guard remained, statue still by the booth. "Your companions?" I asked as I presented the bottle for his inspection. "Business associates." He studied the label, then nodded. "They'll return." I went through the ritual of opening the wine, hyper-aware of his attention on my movements. My fingers fumbled with the foil cutter, and I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. But when I glanced up, he wasn't looking at my hands. He was looking at my face with an intensity that made breathing difficult. "What's your name?" "Arya." The response was automatic, though I immediately regretted giving it. "Arya." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. "It means air, breath, life." "Yes, sir." "Stop calling me sir." There was no harshness in his tone, but the command was clear. "My name is Dante." I poured the wine with trembling hands, praying I wouldn't spill it on the pristine tablecloth. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Dante?" he corrected. "Just Dante." "Is there anything else you need, Dante?" Something flickered in his expression. Satisfaction, maybe, or something darker. Not yet. I retreated to the safety of the kitchen, pressing my back against the cool wall and trying to steady my racing heart. Through the circular window in the swinging door, I could see him. He'd lifted his phone but wasn't looking at it. He was watching the room, that same calculating gaze sweeping across the other diners with the precision of a predator assessing his territory. "Who is he?" I whispered to Marco as he rushed past with another tray. "You don't want to know," Marco muttered. "Just smile, serve, and forget you ever saw him." But forgetting seemed impossible. For the rest of the evening, I felt those dark eyes tracking my movements. Every time I emerged from the kitchen, I found him watching. Not obviously, not in a way that would draw attention, but I felt it like heat against my skin. When I served table 3, he was looking. When I cleared table 9, he was looking. When I bent to retrieve a fallen napkin near table 15, I glanced up to find his gaze fixed on me with such intensity that I nearly dropped the entire tray I was carrying. His associates returned, along with 2 more men I hadn't seen before. They spoke in voices too low to hear, passing a folder back and forth, but Dante's attention kept drifting back to me. It should have frightened me. Perhaps it did. But there was something else beneath the fear. Something I didn't want to examine too closely. The evening wore on. My feet ached in my cheap shoes. My shoulders burned from carrying heavy trays. But every time exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me, I'd feel that gaze and find myself standing straighter, moving with more purpose, as if performing for an audience of one. It was nearly 11 when disaster struck. I was carrying a tray loaded with desserts: tiramisu, panna cotta, chocolate torti, when my worn shoe caught on the edge of a carpet that had been displaced by a patron's chair. Time seemed to slow as I stumbled forward, the tray tilting, gravity claiming its inevitable victory. The crash echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. Porcelain shattered. Cream and chocolate and shattered dreams spread across the floor in an abstract pattern of my failure. And there, splattered across expensive leather shoes and tailored wool trousers, was what remained of a $200 chocolate torte. I looked up slowly, horror congealing in my throat. Dante stood frozen, dessert dripping from his pants, his expression unreadable. The entire restaurant had gone silent. His guards had moved forward, hands inside their jackets, and I realized with sickening clarity that they were reaching for weapons. "I'm so sorry," I choked out, dropping to my knees without thinking. "I'm so sorry. Please. I'll pay for cleaning, My hands moved on instinct, trying to brush the chocolate from his pants, and I heard someone gasp. Too late. I realized what I'd done. I touched him, without permission. My hands were on him, on a man who commanded fear with his presence alone, whose guards were looking at me like I'd just signed my death warrant. I yanked my hands back, but Dante caught my wrist. His grip was firm but not painful, his skin warm against mine. He pulled me to my feet with effortless strength, and suddenly, I was standing close enough to smell his cologne. Something dark and woody with notes of bergamot and danger. "Everyone out," he said quietly, not loudly. But every person in that booth moved immediately, melting away like shadows. Even the guards stepped back, though they kept their eyes fixed on me with lethal focus. We stood in a bubble of silence while the restaurant buzzed with whispers around us. His hand still circled my wrist, his thumb pressed against my racing pulse. He had to feel it, the way my heart hammered against my ribs. "You're terrified," he observed, his voice so low only I could hear it. "Yes," I whispered. What was the point in lying? Good. His free hand came up and I flinched, but he only tucked a strand of hair that had escaped my ponytail behind my ear. The gesture was almost tender, completely at odds with the dangerous man before me. "Fear means you're smart. Fear keeps you alive. Please," I breathed. "I'll do anything. I need this job. I can't afford to lose this job." Something shifted in his expression. He released my wrist but didn't step back. "Anything?" The word hung between us, loaded with possibility and peril. I should have qualified it, should have backtracked, but desperation made me honest. "Yes. Anything." He studied me for a long moment, and I watched thoughts flicker behind those dark eyes like fish moving beneath black water. Then he reached into his jacket, slowly, deliberately, letting me see that he was pulling out a wallet, not a weapon. He extracted a cream-colored business card and pressed it into my hand. "Tomorrow, 2:00, this address." His fingers closed over mine, trapping the card between our palms. "Don't be late, Arya." Then he was gone, moving toward the exit with his entourage forming a protective diamond around him. The other patrons parted like a sea, and I stood in the wreckage of broken porcelain and shattered composure, clutching a business card that felt like it was burning through my skin. Marco appeared at my elbow, his face pale. "What did he say to you?" I looked down at the card. No name, just an address in a part of the city where I'd never been, where people like me didn't belong. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I think I just made a deal with the devil." I didn't sleep that night. The card sat on my nightstand, innocuous as a viper. I'd stared at it for hours after my shift ended, turning it over in my fingers until the edges grew soft and worn. No phone number, no name, just an address embossed in elegant script on heavy cardstock that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. My apartment felt smaller than usual in the pre-dawn darkness. The radiator clanked and hissed, struggling against the December cold that seeped through the single-pane windows I'd covered with plastic sheeting and hope. Water stains bloomed across the ceiling like malignant flowers. The refrigerator hummed its off-key symphony, competing with the argument filtering through the thin walls from 3B. I should have thrown the card away, should have called in sick, hidden in this cramped studio until whatever danger Dante represented found someone else to consume. But desperation had teeth, and they'd been gnawing at me for months. The eviction notice was still tucked under my coffee mug on the kitchen counter. 30 days. I had 30 days to come up with 3 months back rent, plus late fees, or everything I'd been clinging to would disappear. The collection agency had stopped calling about my father's medical bills. They'd moved straight to threatening legal action. And my car was one missed payment away from repossession. Anything, I'd said. Like an idiot. Like someone who'd never learned that the universe kept score. At 1:30, I stood in front of my closet's meager offerings. Nothing seemed appropriate for whatever waited at that address. The black dress I wore to my father's funeral felt too morbid. My 2 other dresses were either too casual or too worn. I finally settled on dark jeans that didn't have any visible holes, and a cream sweater that had been nice before countless washes had pilled the fabric. The address led me to a neighborhood I'd only seen from bus windows. Brownstones with restored facades, streets lined with trees that somehow survived in the concrete. Even the sidewalks looked cleaner here. I felt conspicuous in my secondhand coat with its missing button, clutching my bag against my chest like armor. The building was narrower than its neighbors, wedged between 2 larger structures like an afterthought. But there was nothing careless about the glossy black door or the security camera angled discreetly above the frame. I raised my hand to knock, then noticed the intercom button. Before I could press it, the door opened. The man who stood there wasn't Dante. This one was older, built like a truck, with a scar running through his left eyebrow. He looked me up and down with the professional assessment of someone paid to identify threats. "Arya?" His voice rumbled from somewhere deep in his chest. "Yes." He stepped aside, gesturing me into a narrow hallway that opened into unexpected space. The interior bore no resemblance to my assumptions. Exposed brick walls, gleaming hardwood floors, modern art that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Everything spoke of money spent by someone who knew the difference between expensive and valuable. "Second floor," the guard said. "He's expecting you." My footsteps echoed on the wooden stairs. Another guard stood at the landing, this one younger but equally imposing. He nodded as I passed, but didn't speak. The second floor opened into what might have been a living room in a normal home. Here, it was something else. A space caught between residence and fortress. Leather furniture arranged with mathematical precision. Windows that I suspected were bulletproof. And cameras, subtle but present, in every corner. Dante stood by the window, his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. He wore dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, exposing forearms marked with ink I couldn't quite make out. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. "I don't care what Salvatore thinks," he said into the phone, his voice carrying the edge of someone whose patience had limits. "Tell him if he has concerns, he can bring them to me directly. No more intermediaries." A pause. "Good. And Marco? Make sure our friend understands that crossing me isn't the same as crossing my father. I have less tolerance for disrespect." He ended the call and turned to face me. In the daylight filtering through those enormous windows, he was even more devastating than he'd been in the restaurant's shadows. The angles of his face seemed sharper, his eyes more penetrating. He studied me with the same intensity as the night before, and I fought the urge to fidget under that gaze. "You came," he said. "You said not to be late." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. "You're early. By 15 minutes. I couldn't afford to risk being late." The honesty escaped before I could stop it. He moved toward me with the fluid grace of someone comfortable in his own body, in his own power. "Do you know who I am, Aria?" "No." Another truth. Marco's warning had been clear. I didn't want to know. "But you're frightened anyway." "Yes." He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "Yet you're here, in my home, alone with me. Either you're very brave or very desperate." "The second one," I whispered. His hand came up, and I held myself still as he traced the dark circle under my left eye with his thumb. The touch was gentle, almost clinical. "When did you last sleep?" "I don't remember." "Eat?" I thought of the ramen packet I'd had for breakfast, my second that week. "This morning." He dropped his hand but didn't step back. "You're drowning, Aria. I can see it. The question is whether you'll let someone throw you a rope or if you're too proud to grab it." "I'm not proud enough to drown," I said. "Not anymore." He nodded slowly, as if I'd passed some test. Then he moved to the leather sofa and gestured for me to sit. I perched on the edge, my hands clasped in my lap. He settled across from me, elbows on his knees, his attention fixed on me with laser focus. "I'm going to offer you a job," he said. "Not at the restaurant. Something different. Something that will solve your financial problems." My mouth went dry. "What kind of job?" "My family is very traditional, old-world values, old-world expectations." He leaned back, crossing one ankle over his knee. "Every Christmas, we gather at my grandfather's estate. Children, cousins, aunts, uncles. 3 generations of Morellis under one roof." "That sounds nice," I said, unsure where this was leading. "It would be, except my grandfather has decided it's time for me to settle down, get married, produce heirs to carry on the family legacy." His lip curled slightly. "He's been introducing me to daughters of his associates, women who see me as a transaction, a way to secure their family's position." Understanding began to dawn, cold and uncomfortable. "You want me to pretend to be my wife," he finished. "Just for Christmas. 5 days at the estate. You'll meet my family, play the role of the devoted spouse, and when it's over, I'll pay you enough to solve whatever problems are keeping you awake at night." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "You want me to lie to your family, pretend we're married?" "Yes." "Why me? You could hire an actress, someone professional, because you're real." He leaned forward again, his gaze pinning me in place. "The women my grandfather finds for me are polished to a shine. Everything about them is calculated. But you spilled dessert on me and looked like you expected me to have you killed. That kind of genuine terror can't be faked. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. He pulled a folder from beneath the coffee table and slid it across to me. This is the contract. You'll read every word. You'll understand exactly what you're agreeing to before you sign anything. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first page outlined compensation, a number that made my vision swim. Enough to cover my rent, my debts, and leave a cushion that would let me breathe for the first time in months, maybe years. This is too much, I breathed. It's exactly what it's worth. Keep reading. The second page detailed expectations. Appear affectionate. Respond to his touch. Never contradict him in front of his family. Learn basic information about our supposed relationship. Sleep in the same room, but the contract explicitly stated separate beds. Then I reached the third page, and my blood turned cold. Rule 1. You will not, under any circumstances, be alone with any male member of the Morelli family or any male guests at the estate. If you need to leave a room, Dante or a designated female family member must accompany you. This rule has no exceptions. I looked up to find him watching me with unreadable eyes. What is this? Exactly what it says. This is insane. I can't agree to... You can, and you will. His voice had hardened, losing any pretense of warmth. That rule is non-negotiable. Break it, and the contract is void. You'll receive nothing. Why? I demanded. Why would you... He stood abruptly, moving to the window. His shoulders were rigid beneath the expensive fabric of his shirt. Because the men in my family don't know how to keep their hands to themselves. Because I've seen what happens to women who catch their attention. Because I won't have you becoming collateral damage in games I can't always control. The raw honesty in his voice shocked me silent. My cousin Vincent has a reputation, he continued, still facing the window. My Uncle Carmine thinks his money entitles him to anything he wants. Even my own brother. He stopped, his jaw working. That rule protects you, Arya. It might seem controlling, but it's the only way I can guarantee your safety in that house. And what about my safety with you? The question emerged softer than intended. He turned then, and something dangerous flickered in his expression. With me, you're untouchable. But that protection only works if you follow the rules. I looked back at the contract, at the impossible sum of money, at the 5 days that would save me from drowning. What happens after? When the 5 days are over, you walk away. We go back to our separate lives. I'll tell my family the marriage didn't work out. These things happen. You'll have your money, your freedom, and no further obligations. It sounded simple. Too simple. Nothing in life came without hidden costs. There has to be more. There is. He returned to the sofa but remained standing. While you're there, you belong to me, not in reality, but in appearance. You'll wear what I choose. Go where I tell you. Speak when I allow it. My family will be watching every interaction, judging every gesture. One mistake, and they'll know it's a lie. So, I'm supposed to be your puppet. You're supposed to be my wife. He crouched in front of me, bringing us eye to level. In my world, wives defer to their husbands. It's not politically correct, and I don't expect you to like it, but it's what my family will expect to see. And what do you get out of this? I asked. Besides getting your grandfather off your back? His smile was sharp as broken glass. I get to watch the women he chose for me realize they've lost. I get 5 days of peace instead of 5 days of fighting off marriage proposals. And I get the satisfaction of knowing I chose my own path, even if it's a temporary one. Pride, control, power. The motivations made sense in a twisted way, even if I couldn't fully understand them. I need time to think, I said. You have 5 minutes. He straightened and checked his watch. The car leaves for the estate tomorrow at 8. Either you're in it or you're not. But Arya? He waited until I met his eyes. I don't offer second chances. This is your one opportunity. Walk away now, and you'll never see me again. I thought of my apartment, the eviction notice, the collection calls, the medication I'd been rationing, the future that looked like an endless tunnel with no light. Then I thought of 5 days playing pretend in a mansion with a man who terrified and fascinated me in equal measure. It wasn't really a choice at all. I need a pen, I said. Something blazed in his expression. triumph, or satisfaction, or hunger, I couldn't tell. He produced a pen from his pocket, expensive and heavy. I took it, feeling the weight of what I was about to do settle over me like a shroud. My signature looked small and insignificant at the bottom of the contract. Dante's joined it moments later, bold and decisive. "One more thing," he said as I stood to leave. "Tomorrow morning, a car will pick you up at 7. Bring nothing. Everything you need will be provided. Nothing? No photos, no phone, no reminders of your other life. For 5 days, that life doesn't exist. Only this one." The reality of what I'd agreed to crashed over me like ice water. "I don't even know your last name." "Morelli," he said. "Dante Morelli. And as of tomorrow, you're Aria Morelli. Try not to forget it." The black Mercedes that arrived at 7 the next morning was nothing like the cars I'd grown accustomed to seeing. It gleamed with a polish that seemed almost liquid, its windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. A driver in a charcoal suit emerged, the same scarred man from Dante's brownstone, and opened the rear door without a word. I climbed in, my empty hands feeling strange and weightless. The interior smelled of leather and something subtle I couldn't identify, expensive and clean. Dante sat in the far corner, scrolling through one of his phones. He wore a black sweater and dark jeans, somehow making casual look calculated. He didn't look up as the door closed behind me. "Seatbelt," he said. I fumbled with the mechanism, hyper-aware of the silence between us. The car pulled into traffic with a smoothness that spoke of suspension systems I couldn't fathom. We'd been driving for 5 minutes before he finally set down his phone and turned his attention to me. "You didn't sleep again." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "No." "Second thoughts?" "About 100 of them." His mouth curved slightly. "But you're here." "I signed a contract. Contracts can be broken." He shifted, angling his body toward mine. "Are you going to break this one, Aria?" I met his gaze and saw the test in it. "No." "Good." He reached into a leather bag at his feet and withdrew a small velvet box. My heart stuttered when I saw it. "Give me your left hand." I extended it slowly, watching as he opened the box to reveal a ring that caught the morning light and shattered it into 1,000 pieces. The diamond was substantial, but not ostentatious, set in what looked like platinum. 2 smaller stones flanked it, and the band itself bore intricate engraving. "It was my grandmother's," he said, sliding it onto my finger. The fit was perfect. "She died when I was 12. My grandfather kept it in a safe for years, waiting for the right woman." The weight of it felt wrong on my hand. "I can't wear this. What if something happens to it? Then something happens to it." He didn't release my hand, his thumb tracing over the ring. "But nothing will. You'll treat it with the same care you'd treat your own life, because that's what my family will expect." His touch lingered longer than necessary before he pulled back. From the bag, he produced a folder thick with papers. "Everything you need to know about us, how we met, when we got married, where we went on our honeymoon. Memorize it. My Aunt Francesca has a memory like a steel trap, and she'll test you." I opened the folder to find page after page of fictional history. We'd met at a charity gala. I'd been serving, naturally, and he'd been immediately taken with my grace. We'd dated for 6 months before he proposed at a restaurant overlooking the harbor. We'd married quietly, just a small ceremony, because I preferred intimate gatherings. Our honeymoon had been 2 weeks in the Italian countryside, visiting his family's ancestral home. "This is detailed," I murmured, scanning descriptions of places I'd never been, moments I'd never lived. "It has to be. My family doesn't accept surface-level lies. They dig until they find truth or blood." He paused. "Usually both." The drive stretched into hours. We left the city behind, trading concrete for countryside. Dante took phone calls in Italian, his voice shifting between commanding and coaxing, depending on who was on the other end. I studied the folder, committing facts to memory like I was cramming for an exam that would determine my survival, because maybe I was. "Tell me about your family," he said during a lull between calls. "Your real family." "Why does that matter?" "Because they'll ask. And because I need to know if anyone will come looking for you." The words sent a chill through me. "Should someone be looking for me?" "Not unless you give them a reason to." He watched me with those unsettling dark eyes. Answer the question, Arya. My mother left when I was 6. I don't remember much about her except the smell of her perfume and the sound of the door closing. The memories tasted bitter. My father raised me. He was a good man. Worked construction until his hands gave out, then took whatever jobs he could find. He got sick 3 years ago, lung cancer. I dropped out of college to take care of him. And now? Now he's buried in a cemetery I can't afford to visit because I sold my car to pay for his last month in hospice. My voice cracked, despite my efforts to keep it steady. No one's coming to look for me. I'm a ghost to anyone who might have cared. Dante was quiet for a long moment. That's not true. Which part? The part where you think no one cares. He leaned forward, forcing me to meet his gaze. I care. Because for the next 5 days, you're mine to protect. That means something. It means you need me to play a role. It means more than that. His intensity was almost physical. It means if anyone in that house tries to hurt you, disrespect you, or even looks at you the wrong way, they'll answer to me. Do you understand? I didn't. Not really, but I nodded anyway. The estate appeared like something from a different century. Iron gates opened to reveal a driveway that curved through manicured grounds. The main house sprawled across the landscape. 3 stories of stone and windows, wings extending like arms. Luxury cars lined the circular drive. People moved across the grounds, carrying luggage, greeting each other with kisses and laughter. My stomach twisted into knots. Breathe, Dante commanded softly. And remember, you belong here because I say you do. No one questions that. The driver opened my door, and Dante appeared at my side immediately. His hand found the small of my back, proprietary and warm through my borrowed coat. Because it was borrowed, when I dressed that morning in my own clothes, the driver had handed me shopping bags containing an entirely new wardrobe. The coat I wore probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Dante! A woman's voice rang out, bright and warm. She descended the front steps with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned her place in the world. Dark hair, expensive highlights, designer clothes that draped perfectly over her slim frame. Finally, Nono has been asking about you every 5 minutes. Francesca. Dante's voice held affection, but also wariness. You're looking well, and you're looking mysterious. Her gaze locked onto me, sharp and assessing. Is this her? The wife we've heard absolutely nothing about? Arya, Dante said, his hand pressing slightly harder against my back. This is my cousin Francesca. Francesca, my wife, Arya. I extended my hand, but Francesca pulled me into an embrace that smelled of expensive perfume and subtle interrogation. Let me see the ring, she demanded, pulling back, but keeping hold of my hand. Her eyes widened when she saw it. Madonna, that's Nonna Lucia's ring. Dante, you said... I know what I said. His tone brooked no argument. Things changed. Francesca's gaze moved between us, calculation visible in her expression. Well, this is going to be interesting. Come, Nono is in the study. He'll want to meet her immediately. As we followed her inside, Dante leaned close to my ear. She's already suspicious. Be careful. The interior of the house was overwhelming. Marble floors, oil paintings in gilded frames, furniture that belonged in museums. People filled the spaces, all turning to stare as we passed. I felt their eyes cataloging everything about me, measuring me against some standard I'd never meet. Dante's hand never left my back. When we climbed the grand staircase, his fingers spread wider, more possessive. When a man I didn't know called out a greeting, Dante angled his body between us, blocking the man's view of me. Every gesture screamed ownership in a way that should have offended me, but instead made me feel strangely secure. The study was smaller than I expected, lined with books and smelling of cigar smoke and old leather. An elderly man sat behind an enormous desk, his white hair swept back from a face that must have been handsome 50 years ago. Even seated, his presence filled the room. This was a man accustomed to obedience. No, Dante said, his voice shifting to something more formal. I'd like you to meet my wife. The old man's eyes, the same dark shade as Dante's, fixed on me with predatory interest. So, the mysterious bride. He stood slowly, using a cane but needing it less than he pretended. Come here, girl. Let me look at you. I glanced at Dante, who nodded slightly. I approached the desk, my legs trembling. The old man, Nono, reached out and caught my left hand, examining the ring with a jeweler's attention to detail. You gave her Lucia's ring. His voice was gravelly, accented. Bold choice. She deserved it, Dante said from behind me. Did she? Nono released my hand but continued studying my face. Tell me, Arya. What do you see in my grandson? The question was a trap. I could feel it. I see a man who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to claim it. Something flickered in those ancient eyes. Diplomatic. But I asked what you see, not what you think I want to hear. I took a breath and chose honesty over safety. I see someone who carries the weight of expectations that would crush most people. I see someone who's learned to turn that weight into armor, and I see someone who's lonely in a way that has nothing to do with being alone. The silence that followed my words felt deafening. Dante had gone completely still. Francesca, who'd followed us in, made a small sound that might have been surprise or admiration. Nono's face remained impassive for several heartbeats. Then he smiled, revealing teeth that were too perfect to be original. Interesting. Very interesting. Dante, you've chosen well. Perhaps you have your grandfather's eye after all. Perhaps, Dante said, but there was an edge to his voice I didn't understand. Go, get settled. Dinner is at 7. Everyone will be there. Nono waved us away with his cane. And Arya? Welcome to the family. Try not to let them eat you alive. Dante's hand found mine as we left the study, his grip tight enough to border on painful. He didn't speak as we climbed to the 3rd floor, past curious stares and whispered conversations. Our room was at the end of a long hallway, isolated from the others. He closed the door behind us and released my hand. What the hell was that? What was what? That thing you said to my grandfather, about me being lonely. He turned on me, his expression turbulent. Where did that come from? I don't know. He asked, and I answered. I backed up a step. Was I wrong? That's not the point. He ran a hand through his hair, destroying its careful styling. You can't do that. You can't see things you're not supposed to see and say them out loud. I thought I was supposed to convince them we're really married. You are. But not like that. Not by... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. My grandfather is a dangerous man, Arya. He collects information the way other people collect stamps. You just gave him ammunition against me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Forget it. He moved to the window, putting distance between us. Just be more careful, please. I looked around the room for the first time. It was beautiful in an intimidating way. A massive 4-poster bed dominating the space, antique furniture, rugs that probably cost more than my entire life. And there, tucked discreetly in the corner, was a second, smaller bed. The separation we'd agreed upon. The bathroom is through there, Dante said without turning around. Your clothes are already in the closet. Dinner clothes are marked. Wear the red dress. Dante, I need to make some calls. Stay in this room until I come back for you. Don't open the door for anyone except me. He finally looked at me, and his expression had shuttered completely. Remember Rule 1, Arya. It starts now. He left before I could respond, and I heard the quiet snick of a lock engaging. I was alone in a gilded cage, wearing a dead woman's ring, carrying a false name, and already failing at the role I'd been paid to play. I moved to the window and looked out over the estate grounds. People moved below like pieces on a chessboard, playing games I didn't understand with rules I'd never learned. Somewhere in that house were men Dante feared would hurt me. Somewhere below, his grandfather was analyzing every word I'd said, looking for weaknesses to exploit. And somewhere, buried beneath my terror and uncertainty, was a traitorous flutter of something that felt dangerously close to excitement. Because for 5 days, I belonged to someone who saw me as more than invisible. For 5 days, I mattered enough to protect, even if it was all a beautiful, expensive lie. The ring caught the afternoon light and threw rainbows across the room. I touched it gently, feeling the weight of history and deception. In 5 days, I'd return it. In 5 days, I'd go back to being no one. But right now, for this moment, I was Aria Morelli. And I had no idea if that would save me or destroy me. The red dress fit like it had been designed for my body specifically. Silk that whispered against my skin, a neckline that suggested rather than revealed, a hem that fell just above my knees. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My hair, washed with products that cost more than I wanted to imagine, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. The makeup artist who'd appeared an hour ago had transformed my exhaustion into something that looked almost like elegance. I was studying my reflection, trying to reconcile this woman with the one who'd spilled dessert 2 days ago, when the door opened. Dante entered without knocking, and I watched his reflection freeze behind mine in the mirror. His eyes traveled from my face down to my shoes and back up again, slowly, deliberately. Something dangerous flickered in his expression before he controlled it. "Turn around." I obeyed, my heart hammering. He approached with predatory grace, and I held myself still as he circled me once, then twice. His finger traced along my shoulder blade, adjusting the dress's drape. "Perfect," he murmured. Then, louder, "There's something missing." He withdrew a velvet box from his jacket, longer than the ring box, flatter. Inside lay a necklace that made my breath catch, diamonds and rubies arranged in an intricate pattern, delicate but unmistakably valuable. "I can't wear that," I whispered. "You will." He moved behind me, and I felt the cold kiss of metal against my throat. His fingers brushed my nape as he fastened the clasp, and I shivered involuntarily. In my world, a wife wears her husband's gifts. It shows everyone that you're claimed, protected, mine. That word again, mine. He said it the way other people said their own names, with absolute certainty and ownership. "Look at me." His hand settled on my shoulders, turning me to face him. He'd changed into a black suit that probably cost more than my year's salary. His hair swept back, his jaw sharp enough to cut. "Tonight will be difficult. There will be 23 people at dinner. Most of them will try to find cracks in our story. Some will do it subtly. Others won't bother with subtlety at all. What do I do? You stay close to me. You let me speak for us when appropriate. You smile and nod and remember everything we rehearsed." His thumb stroked small circles on my shoulders. "And if anyone makes you uncomfortable, you tell me immediately. Understood?" "Yes." "Good." But he didn't release me. Instead, his gaze dropped to my mouth, and for a breathless moment I thought he might kiss me. Then he stepped back abruptly. "One more thing. My brother will be there. Marco. You mentioned him before, in the contract briefing. I mentioned he's dangerous." Dante's voice had gone hard. "He's going to test you, Aria. He's going to push boundaries to see if you'll break character. Under no circumstances do you let him isolate you from the group. I remember Rule 1. Rule 1 isn't enough with Marco." He moved to the door, then paused. "He has a gift for finding what people fear and exploiting it. Don't give him ammunition." The dining room could have hosted a small wedding. A table stretched the length of the space, set with china and crystal that caught the chandelier light and multiplied it. People were already gathering, dressed in their finest, carrying cocktails and conversation with equal ease. Dante's hand found my back again as we entered, and I felt eyes turn toward us like flowers seeking sun. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they shifted, became more conscious of our presence. There he is, a man who had to be related to Dante. Same dark coloring, same sharp features, but softer somehow, less dangerous. Approached with a drink in hand, and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. My little brother, finally gracing us with his presence, and this must be the bride we've heard so much about. "Marco." Dante's tone carried a warning. "This is Aria. Aria, my older brother, Marco." Marco took my hand and brought it to his lips, his gaze never leaving my face, enchanted. "Tell me, Aria, how did you manage to trap my notoriously commitment-phobic brother?" "I didn't trap anyone," I said, fighting the urge to pull my hand back. "No?" Marco released me slowly. "Then perhaps he trapped you. Dante always did have a talent for getting what he wants. Marco. Dante's voice dropped to something lethal. Back off. I'm just being friendly. Marco's smile widened. Surely you want your family to welcome your new wife. I want you to remember your manners. The tension between them was thick enough to choke on. I felt Dante's hand press harder against my back, felt the coiled violence in his body. Marco seemed to feel it too, because he laughed and raised his hands in mock surrender. Of course. My apologies, Arya. Welcome to the family. He moved away, but I felt his gaze lingering like oil on my skin. He's going to be a problem, I whispered. He's always a problem. Dante guided me toward the table. Stay on my right. Don't let anyone separate us. Dinner was an elaborate dance of courses and conversations. I sat beside Dante, hyper-aware of every movement, every word. His grandfather held court at the head of the table, telling stories in rapid Italian that made everyone laugh. Francesca sat across from us, watching with calculating eyes. And Marco positioned himself 4 seats down, where he could observe without being obvious about it. The food was incredible, each course more elaborate than the last. But I could barely taste any of it. I was too focused on maintaining my character, on remembering the fiction we'd created, on not making a mistake that would cost me everything. So, Arya, an older woman I'd been introduced to as Aunt Sophia said during the 3rd course, tell us about your family. Where are you from? The question I'd been dreading. I'm from the city. My father passed away a few years ago. My mother left when I was young. How tragic, Sophia said, but her eyes were sharp. And what did your father do? Construction. Then various jobs after his health declined. Construction. She repeated the word like it tasted bad. How industrious. My father was a good man, I said, hearing the edge in my own voice. He worked hard to provide for me. I'm sure he did, dear. Sophia's smile was poison wrapped in sugar. It's just so unusual for Dante to choose someone from such a different background. That's enough, Sophia. Dante's voice cut through the conversation like a blade. My wife's background is none of your concern. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. He set down his fork with deliberate care. Arya's family may not have our name or our money, but she has something more valuable: integrity, grace, strength. His hand found mine under the table, his grip almost painfully tight. Things some people at this table wouldn't recognize if they saw them. The table had gone silent. Even Nonno had stopped eating, watching the exchange with interest. I felt heat flood my face, embarrassment, and something else. Something that felt dangerously like gratitude. Well said, grandson, Nonno finally spoke. Love doesn't concern itself with bank accounts. Your grandmother came from nothing, and she was the finest woman I ever knew. The tension broke slightly, conversations resuming in quieter tones. But Dante's hand remained locked around mine, and I could feel rage vibrating through him like a tuning fork. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me for defending what's mine. He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that felt more like a brand than affection. No one disrespects you while you wear my ring. The possessiveness should have frightened me. Instead, it kindled something warm and dangerous in my chest. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Dessert, coffee, liqueurs I didn't touch. People began to drift away from the table, forming smaller groups throughout the house. Dante kept me at his side, his hand never leaving the small of my back, or my waist or my shoulder. Every touch reinforced the same message. She's mine. I need some air, I finally said, feeling overwhelmed by the heat and the noise and the constant scrutiny. There's a balcony upstairs. Dante started to guide me toward the stairs, but Francesca intercepted us. Dante, Nonno wants to speak with you. Something about the shipment from Naples. He tensed. It can wait. He said now. Francesca's expression was apologetic, but firm. I'll keep Arya company while you're gone. I felt Dante's reluctance in the tightening of his grip. 10 minutes. No more. I'll be fine, I assured him, though my stomach had knotted with anxiety. He leaned close, his lips brushing my ear. Stay with Francesca. Don't go anywhere alone. I'll be back as soon as possible. Then he was gone, and I was left with his cousin, who studied me with undisguised curiosity. Come, she said, linking her arm through mine. Let's get that air you wanted, and maybe you can tell me what's really going on. I don't know what you mean. Please. Francesca guided me through the house and out onto a stone terrace overlooking the gardens. I've known Dante my entire life. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. We're married. You're something, she agreed. But I'm not sure marriage is the right word for it. She pulled out a cigarette case, offering me one. When I declined, she lit her own and exhaled a stream of smoke into the cold air. He's protecting you. That much is obvious. The question is why you need protecting. Your family isn't exactly welcoming. True. But Dante doesn't usually care about things like that. He brings who he wants, when he wants, and everyone else can go to hell. She tapped Ash over the railing. So what makes you different? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe I'm not. Maybe this is just... Aria! A male voice called from inside. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Marco stepped onto the terrace, and Francesca's expression shifted to something wary. Marco. We were just having girl talk. How lovely. But I need to steal the bride for a moment. His smile was charming and completely false. Family tradition. The eldest brother must officially welcome the new wife. I'm sure that can wait until Dante returns, Francesca said. He won't mind. Marco moved closer, and I caught the smell of expensive scotch on his breath. Will he, Aria? After all, we're family now. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse. But Francesca was watching, and I couldn't afford to seem unwilling to integrate with Dante's family. Of course, but perhaps we could speak here? It's so beautiful outside. What I have to say requires privacy. Marco's hand landed on my elbow, his grip firm. Just a few minutes. Francesca, you understand. Francesca hesitated, and I saw the moment she decided not to interfere. Don't be long. Dante will be furious if he comes back and she's gone. Then we'd better hurry. Marco was already guiding me back inside, his hand sliding from my elbow to my waist. This way. My study is just down the hall. Panic clawed at my throat. Rule 1. I was breaking Rule 1, and I couldn't figure out how to stop it without causing a scene that would expose everything. Marco's grip tightened as if he sensed my hesitation. Don't be nervous, he said, his voice dropping to something intimate and unwelcome. I just want to get to know my new sister-in-law better. Is that so wrong? We turned down a corridor away from the main rooms. The sounds of the party faded. My heart hammered against my ribs as Marco opened a door and gestured me inside. The study was smaller than Nono's, lined with books and smelling of leather and smoke. Marco closed the door behind us, and the soft click of the latch sounded like a gunshot. Now then, he said, moving to a sideboard and pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. Let's talk about you and my brother. There's nothing to talk about. I stayed near the door, my hand hovering near the handle. We're married. That's all your family needs to know. But that's where you're wrong. He turned, offering me a glass I didn't take. My family needs to know if you're real, or if you're another one of Dante's chess moves. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? He set down both glasses and approached slowly. My brother is many things, but impulsive isn't one of them. Yet suddenly he's married to a waitress he met weeks ago, wearing our grandmother's ring, bringing her home for Christmas like some kind of prize. He stopped close enough that I had to crane my neck to maintain eye contact. Something doesn't add up, Aria, and I always solve puzzles eventually. Maybe you're just not as smart as you think you are. The words escaped before I could stop them. Marco's expression darkened. Careful. You might be Dante's latest obsession, but that protection only extends so far. What do you want from me? The truth. His hand came up and I flinched, but he only touched the necklace at my throat. These are real. The ring is real. But are you? Or are you just another liar in a house full of them? Get your hand off her. Dante's voice cut through the room like winter wind. He stood in the doorway, and the rage on his face was terrifying. Marco dropped his hand immediately, but his expression remained defiant. We were just talking. You were touching what belongs to me. Dante crossed the space in 3 strides and positioned himself between us. Get out. This is my study. I don't give a damn if it's the Sistine Chapel. Get. Out. Marco laughed, but there was no humor in it. She's got you twisted up, little brother. How long before you realize she's just using you? Dante's fist connected with Marco's jaw so fast I barely saw it move. Marco staggered back, blood blooming from his split lip. For a moment, I thought he'd retaliate. Then Nono's voice rang out from the hallway. Enough! The old man filled the doorway, his cane tapping against the floor. Behind him stood several other family members, drawn by the commotion. Dante's chest heaved, his knuckles bloody, his eyes still locked on his brother. What is the meaning of this? Nono demanded. Marco violated the one rule I gave him, Dante said, his voice deadly calm. He isolated my wife and put his hands on her. I barely touched. You had no right to touch her at all. Dante finally looked at his grandfather. I told everyone, she stays with me or with designated family. Marco knew that rule and broke it anyway. Nono's gaze moved between his grandsons, then landed on me. Is this true, child? Did Marco harm you? He frightened me, I said honestly, but Dante arrived before anything could happen. The old man nodded slowly. Marco, you will apologize to your brother's wife, and then you will stay away from her for the remainder of this visit. No. Now. Marco's jaw worked, but he finally turned to me. My apologies, Arya, I overstepped. The words were hollow, but I nodded acceptance. Dante's hand found mine, his grip almost crushing. We're retiring for the evening, he announced. Arya is tired. No one argued. We walked through the gathered family, and I felt their stares like brands on my skin. Dante didn't speak until we were back in our room with the door locked behind us. Then he pulled me against him, his arms wrapping around me with desperate strength. Did he hurt you? No. You got there in time. I should have stayed with you. I never should have left you alone. His hand cradled the back of my head, pressing my face against his chest. His heart hammered beneath my ear. If he had touched you, if he had hurt you, but he didn't. I pulled back enough to look at his face. Blood still stained his knuckles. Let me clean your hand. In the bathroom, I ran warm water and carefully washed the blood away. His knuckles were split, but not badly. As I worked, I felt his eyes on me, heavy with something I couldn't name. You defended me, I said quietly. You hit your own brother. He broke the rules. He touched what was mine. His free hand caught my chin, tilting my face up. Do you understand yet, Arya? This isn't just an act. While you're here, while you wear my ring, you're under my protection. And I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it made something inside me melt and reshape itself. I thought of all the times I'd been invisible, disposable, forgettable. And now this dangerous man was claiming me like I mattered, like I was worth defending, worth fighting for. Even if it was only pretend. Even if it would end in 3 more days. Thank you, I whispered. His thumb brushed across my lower lip. Don't thank me. Just promise me you won't break the rules again. I promise. Good. But he didn't release me. We stood there in the bathroom's soft light, his hand on my face, mine wrapped around his damaged knuckles, breathing the same air. When he finally stepped back, the loss of his warmth felt like abandonment. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be worse. Christmas Day always brings out the worst in my family. I changed in the bathroom, emerging in the silk nightgown that had been provided. Dante had already claimed his smaller bed, stripped to his waist, tattoos I'd glimpsed before, now fully visible. Saints and sinners inked across his skin in elaborate detail. I climbed into the large bed, feeling it swallow me. The sheets smelled like him, bergamot and danger and something uniquely Dante. I closed my eyes and tried to quiet my racing heart. Arya? His voice came through the darkness. Yes? I meant what I said. You're mine to protect. Remember that. I touched the ring on my finger, the necklace at my throat. 5 days. I had 3 more days of being his. And God help me. I wasn't sure I wanted them to end. Christmas morning arrived with snow falling silent and thick beyond the windows. I woke to find Dante already dressed, standing at the glass with a phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. The smaller bed was empty, its sheets undisturbed. He'd never slept. "Capisco," he said into the phone. "Handle it quietly. I don't want complications today of all days." He ended the call and turned to find me watching. "Buon Natale." "Merry Christmas," I replied, my voice still rough with sleep. He approached the bed, and I realized I was still in the nightgown. The covers pooled around my waist. His gaze traveled over me before he caught himself. "There's breakfast downstairs, then gift exchange, then Christmas dinner." He sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that I felt the heat of him. "My family goes all out for Christmas. It's the one day a year when we pretend we're normal. Are you ever normal?" Not since I was 12 and my father sat me down to explain what business we were really in. Something dark crossed his face. "Get dressed. The green dress. And Arya." He waited until I met his eyes. "Stay close to me today, especially close." The warning sent ice through my veins. "What's wrong?" "Nothing yet, but Marco isn't done. He's humiliated, and humiliated men in my family do stupid things." He stood, moving to the door. "I'll be right outside. 10 minutes." The green dress was emerald silk that brought out the gold in my skin. I brushed my hair until it shone and applied minimal makeup, my hands steadier than they'd been yesterday. When I emerged, Dante was leaning against the wall, scrolling through messages. He looked up, and that same arrested expression from yesterday crossed his features. "Beautiful," he murmured, then seemed to catch himself. He offered his arm. "Ready?" The house had transformed overnight. Garlands draping every surface, a massive tree in the main hall covered in ornaments that probably cost more than cars. The smell of cinnamon and pine and something baking filled the air. Family members gathered in the formal living room, already dressed in their finest, drinking champagne at 9 in the morning. Nono presided over the chaos from his throne-like armchair, directing traffic with his cane. When he saw us, his weathered face creased into something almost warm. "Ah, the newlyweds. Come, sit. We're about to begin." Dante guided me to a love seat positioned in Nono's direct line of sight. His arm draped across my shoulders, his thumb tracing absent patterns on my upper arm. To anyone watching, we looked like what we were supposed to be. A couple so newly married we couldn't bear to stop touching. But beneath the performance, I felt tension humming through Dante's body like a live wire. Gift exchange was a lavish affair. Boxes wrapped in expensive paper passed from person to person. Jewelry, watches, designer clothes. I received gifts from family members I'd barely spoken to, a scarf from Francesca, perfume from Aunt Sophia that smelled like an apology, a bracelet from one of the uncles whose name I couldn't remember. Then Dante handed me a box wrapped in silver paper. From me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside lay a first edition of a book I'd mentioned once during our rehearsed history, a novel about a woman who'd lost everything and rebuilt herself from ashes. The cover was pristine, the pages delicate with age. "How did you—" I looked up, shocked. "This costs thousands." "I know what it costs." His expression was unreadable. "I also know you sold all your books to pay bills. Consider this the first of many you'll own again." The gesture hit me like a physical blow. He'd listened. He'd remembered. He'd cared enough to find something that mattered, not just something expensive. My eyes burned with tears I couldn't afford to shed. "Thank you," I whispered. "You're welcome, wife." He pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my temple that felt less like performance and more like possession. I'd gotten him a gift, too, a vintage fountain pen I'd found in one of the estate's many shops. Using money Dante had given me for expenses, it wasn't much compared to what he'd given me. But when he opened it, something shifted in his expression. "My father had one like this," he said quietly, "before he died. I'm sorry." "I didn't know. Don't apologize." He tested the pen's weight in his hand. "It's perfect." The moment broke when Marco entered the room, his jaw bruised, his eyes cold. He carried a bottle of wine and an envelope. "For the happy couple," he announced, his voice carrying across the room, "a gift from me and Elena." Elena, a woman I'd been introduced to briefly, Marco's girlfriend or wife or something, smiled from where she sat. but Marco's smile was sharp as glass. Dante took the envelope without opening it. "Thank you." "Aren't you going to read it?" Marco pressed. "It's a gift certificate for a romantic weekend getaway. Thought you two might enjoy some time alone, away from family pressures." The emphasis on pressures was deliberate. I watched Dante's jaw tighten, watched him calculate whether rising to the bait was worth it. "Very thoughtful," Dante said finally, setting the envelope aside. "We'll consider it." "You do that." Marco's gaze slid to me. After all, every marriage needs to be tested. See if it can survive outside controlled environments. "Marco." Nono's voice cracked like a whip. Enough, but the damage was done. The room had gone quiet, everyone watching to see what would happen next. I felt Dante's arm tighten around me, felt violence coiling in his muscles. "Perhaps we should open the wine," I heard myself say. It would be rude not to accept such a generous gift. The deflection worked. Marco's smile widened, but he backed off. Dante's hand found mine under the cover of my skirt, squeezing once in what might have been gratitude or warning. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of forced cheer and underlying tension. By the time we broke for lunch, my face hurt from smiling. Dante barely left my side, his touch constant, a hand on my back, fingers laced through mine, his body angled to shield me from direct interaction with his brother. "You're exhausted," he observed as we climbed the stairs to change for dinner. "I can see it." "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." He unlocked our door and guided me inside. "Rest. I have some business to handle before dinner. I'll be back in an hour." "What kind of business?" "The kind you don't want to know about." He caught my face in his hands, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me, understand?" "Yes." But he didn't move. He stood there, holding my face, his dark eyes searching mine for something I couldn't name. "3 more days," he said softly. 3 more days, and you're free." The words should have brought relief. Instead, they felt like mourning. He left before I could respond. I locked the door and collapsed onto the bed, still wearing the green dress, too tired to care about wrinkles. My mind raced with everything that had happened. The gifts, the tension, Marco's thinly veiled threats. But beneath it all was something else, something I didn't want to examine. The way Dante looked at me, the way his touch lingered, the way he'd chosen a gift that meant something instead of something expensive. These weren't the actions of a man playing a role. These were the actions of a man who... No, I couldn't let myself think that way. This was temporary. A transaction. In 3 days, I'd take my money and disappear back into my regular life, and Dante would find another way to appease his grandfather. I must have dozed because I woke to shouting from somewhere below. Male voices raised in anger. The words were Italian, but the rage transcended language. I sat up, my heart hammering, straining to identify the voices, Dante and Marco, fighting about something that made the floor vibrate with violence, a crash, breaking glass, more shouting, then silence so complete it was worse than the noise. I was at the door before I consciously decided to move, my hand on the lock, but Dante's words echoed in my memory. "Don't open it for anyone but me." I pressed my ear against the wood, listening. Footsteps in the hallway, multiple sets, moving fast. A knock made me jump back. "Aria!" Francesca's voice, tight with stress. "Open the door, quickly." I hesitated. Dante had said only him, but Francesca was designated family, wasn't she? And something was clearly wrong. I unlocked the door. Francesca slipped inside, her face pale, her hands shaking. "Get your things. The clothes you came in. Whatever's yours." "What? Why?" "Because Dante just beat Marco half to death in Nono's study, and the family is fracturing." She moved to the closet, pulling out the bag I'd arrived with. Marco said something. I don't know what. But Dante snapped. Really snapped. Nono is trying to calm things down, but... The door burst open. Dante filled the frame, his shirt torn, his knuckles bleeding again, his face carved from stone. "Out, Francesca." She fled without argument. Dante closed the door and locked it, then turned to face me. Blood spattered his collar. His chest heaved with exertion or rage or both. "What happened?" I whispered. Marco can't keep his mouth shut. His voice was gravelly, dangerous. He implied things about you, about what kind of woman would marry me for money. He crossed to me in 3 strides. I told him if he said your name again, I'd kill him. He laughed, so I made sure he understood I wasn't joking. Dante, don't. His hands framed my face, tilting it up to meet his burning gaze. Don't tell me I overreacted. Don't tell me he's family. Don't tell me any of the rational things I already know. I wasn't going to. My hands came up to cover his, feeling the blood cooling on his skin. I was going to say thank you. Something broke in his expression. You shouldn't thank me. You should run from me. I'm not a good man, Arya. I never have been. But when he talked about you like you were nothing, like you were just some gold-digging, he stopped, his jaw working. I couldn't hear it. I won't hear it. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why do you care so much? This is just an arrangement, a business deal. In 3 days, I'm gone. His laugh was bitter. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't been counting down the hours until you disappear from my life? His thumbs stroked my cheekbones, a gesture at odds with his harsh words. But while you're here, while you wear my ring, while you carry my name, you're mine. And I protect what's mine, even when it's temporary, even when it destroys me. The raw honesty in his voice cracked something open inside me. What if I don't want to be temporary? The words hung between us like a held breath. Dante's eyes searched mine, looking for deception, for manipulation, for anything except the truth I was too exhausted to hide. Don't, he said roughly. Don't say things like that unless you mean them. I mean them. My hand slid from his to grip his forearms, feeling the tension coiled there. I came here for money, for survival. But somewhere between your grandfather's study and tonight, something changed. You changed it. You made me feel like I mattered, like I was worth defending, worth protecting. Worth. He kissed me. Not gently. Not tentatively. He kissed me like a drowning man finding air, his hands tangling in my hair, his body pressing mine against the door. I kissed him back with equal desperation, tasting blood and anger, and something that felt terrifyingly close to need. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. This is insane. You know that, right? I know. I'm not a good man. I do terrible things for terrible reasons. My world is violent and dangerous and not meant for people like you, people like me. Good people. Innocent people. People who deserve better than what I can offer. His hands gentled in my hair. You should take your money and run as far from me as possible. What if I don't want to run? Then you're as crazy as I am. He kissed me again. Softer this time, but no less consuming. And God help us both. A sharp knock interrupted us. Dante? Nonno's voice muffled by the door. We need to talk. Now. Dante's eyes closed briefly, his hands tightening in my hair. Then he released me and stepped back, leaving me cold and unsteady. Stay here. I mean it this time. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. What's going to happen? I don't know. But whatever it is, you're protected. I'll make sure of it. He cupped my face one more time. Trust me, Arya. I do. The surprise in his expression nearly broke me. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the taste of him on my lips and the certainty that nothing would ever be the same. I paced the room for what felt like hours. Outside, the sun set early, winter darkness claiming the estate. Voices rose and fell from somewhere below, arguing, negotiating, deciding my fate without my input. When the door finally opened, I spun around expecting Dante. Instead, Nonno entered, using his cane but moving with more purpose than pretense. He closed the door behind him and studied me with those ancient, calculating eyes. Sit, child. I obeyed, sinking onto the edge of the bed. He settled into the armchair by the window, arranging himself with the care of someone whose bones remembered every year they'd carried. You've caused quite the upheaval, he said finally. In less than 3 days, you've managed to fracture my family in ways I haven't seen in 20 years. I'm sorry. I never meant... Don't apologize for being the catalyst. Sometimes families need to break before they can heal properly. He tapped his cane against the floor. Dante told me everything. The arrangement, the contract, the 5 days. All of it. Horror flooded through me. Sir, He also told me he's in love with you. The world tilted. What? I've known that boy since he drew his first breath. Watched him grow from a baby into the man who now runs half our operations. I've seen him angry, violent, cold, calculating. But I've never seen him terrified until tonight. Nono leaned forward. He's terrified of losing you, Arya. Terrified that when these 5 days end, you'll take your money and disappear, and he'll go back to being the lonely man you described in my study. Tears burned my eyes. I don't know what to say. Say whether you feel the same, because if this is still just a transaction for you, I need to know. I won't watch my grandson destroy himself over a woman who can't love him back. I thought of Dante's hands on my face. His voice saying, "You're mine." The way he defended me at every turn, fought for me, bled for me. The gift he'd chosen because he'd listened. The kiss that had tasted like coming home. I didn't mean to fall for him, I whispered. I came here for money, for survival. But he made me feel like I was worth something. Like I mattered. And somewhere between fear and gratitude, my voice broke. I fell in love with a man I was supposed to be pretending to love. How stupid is that? Nono's laugh was rough but genuine. Not stupid, human. He stood slowly, moving to the door. The contract is void. Dante burned it an hour ago. You're free to leave whenever you want, with the full payment he promised. What? He said he won't trap you, won't force you to stay. If you want to go, the car is ready. Nono opened the door, then paused. But if you want to stay, if you want to try building something real with him, he's downstairs, in the library, waiting to see which choice you make. Then he was gone, and I was left alone with the most important decision of my life. I could take the money and run, go back to my old life with enough to start over. Be safe. Be free. Be alone. Or I could walk downstairs and choose the dangerous man who'd somehow become my entire world in less than a week. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. I found him in the library, standing by the fireplace with his back to me. He'd changed his shirt, cleaned the blood from his hands, but his shoulders still carried the weight of someone expecting rejection. Dante. He turned slowly, his expression carefully blank. You're still here. I'm still here. Your money is in an account Francesca set up. The car can take you anywhere you want to go. His voice was controlled, but his hands betrayed him, curling into fists at his sides. You're free, Arya. Completely free. And if I don't want to be free, hope flickered in his eyes before he shuttered it. Don't do this if you're not sure. I can't. I won't survive you walking away twice. I crossed the space between us, took his damaged hands in mine. I'm not walking away. I'm walking toward you. If you'll have me. The real me, not the character I was playing. The real you is all I've wanted since you spilled dessert on my shoes and looked at me like I was death incarnate. He pulled me close, one hand cradling my face, the other at my waist. But my world is dangerous, Arya. There will be threats, enemies, violence. I can protect you from most of it, but not all of it. Are you sure? I kissed him, cutting off his words. I'm sure. I'm terrified, but I'm sure. His arms came around me, holding me like I was something precious and breakable. Then marry me. Really marry me. Not for my grandfather. Not for money. Marry me because you want to spend your life with a man who will probably drive you crazy, but who will love you until his last breath. Yes. The word was easy, natural, right. Yes to all of it. He kissed me then, not with desperation, but with promise. And for the first time since my father died, I felt like I'd found home. 6 months later, we married for real. Small ceremony, just immediate family. Francesca was my maid of honor. Even Marco attended, his jaw healed, his relationship with Dante still fractured but mending slowly. I wore a different dress, but the same ring, Nonna Lucia's diamond, that had always fit perfectly. Nono cried during the vows, which he denied vehemently later. And Dante, my dangerous, possessive, impossible man, promised before God and family to protect me, honor me, and love me for whatever time we had. You're mine, he whispered as we danced at the reception, his arms wrapped around me, his heart beating against mine. I'm yours, I agreed. But Dante? Yes, wife? You're mine too. Don't forget it. His laugh was warm and real. I wouldn't dream of it. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent and full of promise. Inside, surrounded by family who'd become mine, held by the man who'd saved me by letting me save him, I finally understood what it meant to belong. Not because someone owned me, but because I'd chosen to be owned. And that made all the difference.